Hi, and welcome to Empty Nest Creations. My name is Wendy. If you're new here, thank you for joining me. And if you're a subscriber, I want to thank you for coming back. Today, we're going to be creating this sled sign for the North Pole Sled Factory. This is a sled that I thrifted a couple of weeks ago, and I've updated it, and it's ready to go for the holidays. If you're interested in seeing how I put all this together, stick around and I'll show you what I did. Let's get crafting. Okay, for this project, you're going to need, what I'm using is this little sled. And of course, you can do this with just a piece of wood for a sign or anything, any other flat surface that you want to put this on. I have printed out a stencil. And I'm going to weed the stencil, but I printed it on just some contact paper. And we'll talk about how to do this in just a minute. I'm going to use some paints. I'm going to use the same paint that I painted the surface with. So this is the Waverly chalk paint in lacquer. It's the red color. And I've already painted the surface in this, and I will tell you why we're going to use this again in just a minute. And then I'm just going to use some craft paint in white. I've got some of these makeup sponges that I will use to do my stenciling with, and I just picked these up at the Dollar Tree. I have one of these little plastic trays for painting. And that's really it for this project. You might need a blow dryer if you want to dry your paint in between, okay? So I'm going to shift the camera down so you can see what I'm doing, and then we'll get started. Okay, so I've weeded this, and so what I'm doing now is I'm going to release it from the backing so that we can lay it onto our surface. Normally you would use transfer tape if you were using vinyl, but with this contact paper, the transfer tape doesn't really release. So I'm not going to use the transfer tape. I'm just going to pull this off very gently, and then we're going to attach it to our board. Just be patient. Take your time. Now, if you don't have a Cricut or a Silhouette machine, you can certainly do this with a stencil. Just shop around and find a stencil that you like, and then you can use that for your sign. I wanted a specific thing on here, so that's why I'm using this stencil. And I'm just taking my time working to get each one of these pieces off. This is the hard part. You just want to be careful and not let your contact paper fold up on itself like it's trying to do right there. So I'm just working and kind of letting it hang as I pull it off. Okay, so now I've got the piece off. And so I'm going to lay it on and just start getting it down on our surface where we want it. I'll turn it this way so I can make sure that I get it straight. Once you get it on, you just want to start pressing it down. Making sure it's nice and flat on your surface. Okay, then you'll notice that some of our letters are missing their centers, like the O and the R. So we have to go back and pull those pieces off. And so here they are all on here. So we're just going to lay this down and start moving these pieces using the tool to lift them up gently. And then just placing them in where they go. So this part might be a little time consuming. You might want to use some tweezers to help you make sure that you get all these pieces in the right place. So I'll do one more so you can see. This is the middle of the R. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of those, and then I'll be back. So I have all the pieces put in. So all of the letters have their center pieces, and then I added all of these pieces in here in the sleigh to complete that look. So on the piece of paper, and I don't think you can see, but on the backing where the cut lines were, it left an impression. So I was able to just use this as a guide to show me where to make sure I put everything in the right place. So you want to make sure that everything is smoothed down. We're going to go ahead and place our other reindeer at the top. This one should be easier. Place them right at the top here. And you just want to make sure it's smoothed down, nice and flat. Okay, so an old stenciling trick to make sure that you don't have bleed through is to start with the same color that your base coat is. So I'll put some of this red on my palette, and I'm almost out. Let me shake it for a minute and see if I can get it out. We're going to let that sit for a minute. We're going to start with what's in the lid here. So I'm just using this sponge, and I'm just lightly dabbing it into the paint. And then I'm going to go over all of these areas with this red paint. Now what this will do is, if anything bleeds under your stencil, it's going to be this red color. And so this kind of seals your stencil down. And then when you go to do your next coat, your next color, it will sit on top. And when you peel your stencil off, you shouldn't have any bleed through from your second color. Here it comes. This paint I've been using it for a while, so it's gotten a little thick. You don't want a lot on your sponge, just a little bit, and dab it on all the way across your stencil. And so this is where, you know, the blow dryer would come in handy if you want to dry your project in between using the blow dryer. So I'm just going to keep covering this with this first coat of red. And I'm going to be really careful around these areas where I put these small pieces in. I don't want them to lift it's off while I'm stenciling. So I'm just going to be really gentle around those areas. Okay, so this is all covered with the red. So now we're going to go back and do the white on top. Now you have to be careful, and we're going to hope that this all works out right. Sometimes when you go back over chalk paint, it can reactivate it. And so what I'm going to do is just be really careful. I'm not going to use a lot of paint, so we may do multiple coats, but I'm just going to go lightly over, and I'm going to try not to go back over the same spot more than once, and just tap this on and then go to the next area. Now you want to be careful and not go over the edges of your stencil. So when you're on these end pieces, you just want to be really careful. And I'm putting some paint on my sponge and then dabbing it off so that there's just not a lot on there. I don't know about you guys, but I tend to hold my breath when I am doing any kind of craft like this. So I have to remind myself to breathe. I don't know, in my brain, I guess I think that holding my breath is going to make it work right. But so far, we're doing fine. I think the key with this one is to just do light coats so that we don't turn this to pink. Okay, so there's the first coat, and like I said, it's just a super light coat. So I'm going to let that dry for a minute, and because we're doing really light coats, it shouldn't really take long for it to dry. I'd like to know about your holiday traditions. So my children are grown. I have a 25-year-old daughter and a 28-year-old son, and then I have my husband has a son who lives with us, and he will be 18 in another week. But when my children were little and living at home, we had a tradition where every year they got matching pajamas. And it started out when they were really young. They had these really cute snowman pajamas one year, and so I bought both of them a pair, and that's kind of where it started. And then the tradition became that every year they would get a new set of matching pajamas, and that would be what they were able to open on Christmas Eve. They would open their new pajamas and they would wear them that night, and so I know that that's a big thing today, but 20 years ago, not everybody was doing that, and it was very difficult when they got older, say like middle school age and high school age, to find matching pajamas for a boy and a girl. So we had to get creative. And so one year they both got Grinch pajamas, and they weren't exactly the same, but they were both Grinch pajamas. And then we did superheroes one year. So that was one of our traditions. Another one is, and even now we get together and make Christmas cookies a couple of weeks out, and my son comes over and his wife, and one year he even brought his nieces over, and we made tons and tons of cookies, and then everybody took some home, and we shared some with my daughter-in-law's family, and so that's one of the fun things we do. And I don't have a huge kitchen, so we have cookies on the dining room table and on the kitchen countertops, and I pull out the ironing board, and we have cookies cooling on the ironing board, and so that's fun. And every year we have some, just, some of our favorite cookies. Of course, we always do sugar cookies, but my son likes these chocolate mint cookies, and they're made with like the Andes mints. His favorite ice cream is mint chocolate chip, and so that's kind of where the cookie is based off of, is mint chocolate chip ice cream. And so we make those every year, and just whatever they come up with. We make peanut butter balls and things like that too. So share in the comments below, what are your family's traditions? What are the things that you do that make Christmas Christmas? All right, so we've got 2 coats on, and I'm going to let this one dry and possibly do a 3rd coat. So I'll be back when it's ready to pull the stencil off. Okay, so 3rd coat is dry. Excuse my squeaky chair. And we're going to go ahead and start peeling this off. And here's my admission. I have done this before with varying degrees of success. So we're just going to pull this off and see what we have. Oh, that doesn't look bad. Looks pretty good. We do have a little bit of bleed through up here on his antlers. All right, so let's see if we can pull this piece off. Lift up this corner. We have a lot of bleed through. Even though we did the red undercoat, but that's okay. We can fix that. All right, so we'll pull off all of these little pieces that we had to add individually. All right, so let me do this. I'll pull off all these little pieces and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like, and we'll talk about how we can fix the bleed through. So I have all of the extra little pieces taken off. And I don't know if you can see on camera, the H is pretty bad right there. where we had some bleed through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my red paint. And I'm going to take a tiny brush. And I'm just going to try to touch up some of these areas where we had the bleed through. Now, I have had in the past where I have done this same type of stencil. I've used just the regular vinyl that you would use for, you know, any other project, and put it down and did my stencil, and it did much better as far as bleed through goes. But the problem with that has been that it sometimes will pull your background paint off. So if you paint it on your wood, when you peel that vinyl off, it pulls off some of the wood. And if you're going for a very rustic look, then that's not always a bad thing. But sometimes it pulls off too much paint. Sometimes it only pulls it off in certain areas. And so it can make it just not look really great. So, and I've used the contact paper, and it has worked great sometimes and sometimes not so great. This particular roll was not very sticky, so it wasn't sticking really well to the surface, and that, I think, is part of the problem, is that it just didn't stick well enough. So I'm going to go through and touch up the areas that are really bad with bleed through. And then I'm probably going to take a 220, maybe 300 grit sandpaper and just kind of sand the whole thing to distress it a little bit. And that'll take off some of the areas where it bled through. So we'll let this dry, and then I will do some light sanding, and then I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like. Okay, so I've got a 320 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to sand over everything. Okay, so then I'm going to wipe off all the dust. Okay, that gave it a little bit of a distressed look, like it's been around for a while. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to work on some bells to hang on it. So I have these bells that I got from the Dollar Tree. And they're just little jingle bells with stars and a snowflake on the bottom. But they look way too new. So I'm going to age these a little bit with some paint. So I have two Waverly paints. I have Waverly in ink, which is a black color. And then I have the Truffle, which is a brown color. I'm going to go ahead and open these. I don't even think I've ever opened this Truffle one. So we're going to start with just a base coat of black and Truffle. Try not to get this all over me. Okay, and then I also have Folk Art Brushed Metal in Brushed Bronze. I'll be using this color. And a little bit of the Metallic Gold by Folk Art as well. Okay, so I have a toothpick that I'm going to hold these with. Just slide that in there. And that makes it just easier for me to turn it and dab the paint on. And so I'm just going to tap the paint on all over. Just don't really want to have a bright silver bell on this aged sled sign. So I'm not going to cover up all of the silver, but just really kind of knocking that silver down some with these colors. So just tap it on. And we want to do both sides. So, okay, so this is what I have so far. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. We'll just tap the black on. Whoop. Okay, so I'm really not going to wash my brush. We're just going to kind of rub some of that off. And then we're going to go some of the truffle. And we're going to do the same thing. Just blot it on. All over. Okay, so that's what that one looks like. So we're going to go ahead and do the other one with the truffle and then let them dry, and then we'll come back and add the metallic colors. Okay, so now the black and brown are dry. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this gold and a little bit of this bronze into my palette. And then we're going to do the same exact thing. Just tapping it on in random places. On the top and the bottom. And so that's with the bronze on it. And I don't know if you can actually see the nice little shimmer that that's giving to it, but that's the bronze. So we'll do this one with the bronze. Okay, and then again, I'm just going to kind of wipe the brush off on my paper and then switch to the gold. Just barely tapping that on. Okay, so that's what we have so far. So we're gonna let these dry, and then we're going to attach them to the sleigh, or to the sled. Okay, so we'll let that dry, and then we will come back and finish putting the sled together. Okay, so the bells are dry. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add some twine to the top so we can hang it. And I'm going to double this up. I just don't think this twine is really thick enough. So I'm going to take a double piece, and I'm going to put it through the hole here. Bring it out on the other side. Okay, and then I'm just going to tie a knot. Make a double knot here. Make sure it doesn't pull back through that hole. Okay, and then I'm going to take the other end and we're going to put it through this other hole. And then again, tie a knot. Okay, and so that's what it will hang by, right there. And then for our bells, what I'm thinking is I'm going to hang them from this rail right here so that they just hang down. So I'm going to take each bell, string this on. And I'm going to cut probably about, I don't know, 2 feet, 2.5 feet of twine. I'm going to string the other one separately. Just run it through. Okay, so I want them to hang one longer than the other. So I'm going to tie a knot right here. All right. Then I'm going to take this and I'm going to just wrap it around. Let's see. And wrap it around a couple of times in different directions here. And then I'm just going to tie these off. In a knot. Now you could put a bow there or put something else there to decorate the handle, but I really want it to kind of stay plain and rustic, so I'm just going to leave it just like that. So I will hang this up and show you what it looks like hanging. Okay, so here it is set up in our entryway. This is not a complete display, but I just hung it here so you can see kind of what it's going to look like hanging on a wall. The bells hang really nicely when it's hanging up. I think this turned out great. So please let me know in the comments below what you think. If you try something similar, please share a picture with me. I'd love to see it. Remember to like and share this video. Consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you know when I upload new videos. And I will see you in the next video.